Listeners, beware. This podcast contains themes of the macabre and does not shy away from the details. Our content is graphic and our language is colorful. We might not be your cup of tea, so listener discretion is strongly advised. You have tuned in to The Killer Tea, a podcast hosted by two best friends with a proclivity to decipher the deeply demented minds of murderers.
Welcome to the Killer Tea Podcast, bonus episode 1. On today's episode, we will be discussing
Satanism and the Satanic Temple.
We are your hosts, Christina,
and Chelsea.
and today we are featuring a very special guest named Kyle. He is from the Friends of the Satanic Temple in Ohio. Now, we wanted to bring Kyle on because we have talked often of satanic panic and Satanism in true crime, and even in some of the cases that we have researched.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, think of Donald Harvey.
Yes, exactly. The whole point in doing this interview with Kyle is to kind of give you firsthand experience of what the Satanic Temple is like, and it's straight from the horse's mouth, not through publication or media or hearsay.
Or even from our interpretation of what Satanism is about.
Here's your disclaimer. Due to the nature of this topic, there will be some mentions of controversial topics, including politics, including religion, specifically religious beliefs. There's a lot of mention of sexuality and civil liberties.
This is your warning. If this is not your cup of tea, we will see you in the next episode for our regular scheduled programming.
But without further ado, it's time to meet Kyle. And I'm so
Yay!
excited. You're going to love him. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Yeah, of course. No problem.
We wanted to bring you on because we believe that Satanism gets a really bad rep,
We do.
especially in true crime. Not only is it kind of like vilified, but it's over.
It's a reason, I'm using air quotes, a reason for why people do bad things. And we know that that's bullshit, but the general public doesn't necessarily know that that's bullshit. And so we wanted to do this to shed some light on what Satanism actually is, and to hopefully take that stigma away from all Satanists are serial killers.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of times, especially with YouTube, it's a blessing and a curse. You know, somebody will do coverage of true crime or of a serial killer, especially in the 80s and the 90s. And they'll say, well, he was a Satanist.
Yeah, and how they have to go out of their way.
Yes. And so that's just where we're at. And we're so thankful that you were willing to sit down and have a conversation with us. I'm loving the Mortal Kombat video game behind you.
Thank
That's
you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
But yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am Kyle. I am one of the co-lead organizers of the Friends of the Satanic Temple, Ohio. We are not an official chapter yet. That should be hopefully coming within, sooner rather than later. I am also not a spokesperson for the Satanic Temple, so I do not speak for them as a group. Once chapterhood status is established, the International Council puts in place and does what they need to do to establish the chapters, who will then speak for the group. That has not been done with me because we are not a chapter. So that's where we're at. I have actually been involved for a relatively short period of time. I feel like even a lot of people in our group are not fully aware of this. I first joined the Ohio group, I think it was February of last year.
Okay.
And yeah, I've been involved since then. The organizer leadership position, I got that role somewhere around May of last year. May, June of last year, roughly.
All right. So we have compiled a list of questions for Kyle that we kind of polled our audience, asked some of our friends that had mutual interests, and then some of our own stuff that we were,
perceived stigmas that we knew of.
Right.
And then also just a little bit of questions that we had for you. So for question number 1, many people think of Satanism as the reverse of Christianity. And as somebody who grew up in a youth group, I can verify that. Or as devil worshipers. So do you worship the devil as a deity?
No. I'm involved in the Satanic Temple.
Mm-hmm.
There are various satanic groups. So every group obviously comes at it from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to speak from my personal standing. We do not. We do not worship anything. We are a non-theistic group, so we do not believe in any gods, Satan, devil, supernatural. We don't believe in any of it. We use the representation and the character of Satan as solely just representing the counter to authority. So again, just the idea of being of the rebel and being the counterbalance against the Christian right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's no worship whatsoever, and even the term devil worshiper is that. I mean, that's something completely different.
That's not something that you guys align yourselves with.
No.
Whenever somebody throws that at you, do you instinctually react or?
I actually had this experience like within the last week.
Oh.
Yeah, with everything being shut down and everything, I picked up a job at a local grocery store just once again to kind of kill some time. And there's a kid that works there who about a week or so before that, a handful of people I work with started adding me on Facebook, and I knew where this was gonna lead.
God,
so this kid comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I don't want to ask anything overly personal, but do you worship Satan?" So I had to give him the rundown on that. But no, I mean it's simple enough. I mean, it's just if people are going to come at it with preconceptions, well, there's nothing I can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
But people that listen, I think most people that I talk to about it, they get it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just we don't worship. It's more representation. We take the symbols, we take the the ideas and the representation without the supernatural aspect of it. I feel like most people get that. I mean, at least from my perspective.
But even what you're talking about right now, I'm atheist. I can't speak for.
We're both atheists.
Yeah, we're both atheists. But I grew up. My parents weren't religious, but I felt like I needed to learn about it and that I was pressured to be religious. So I went to youth group and I spent time educating myself, and I can very much so like your personality that you bring to the table just in the 10 minutes that we've been recording is completely opposite to what I've been conditioned to perceive you as. Completely opposite. So I think even just hearing you talk right now is a testament to how wrong things are.
So question 3, are there any satanic holidays?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so interested.
This is a relatively new development. I think this released, or this list got released, I want to say like January of this year. We've got Lupercalia, which is on February 15th. That comes from the Romans. And to sum that one up, that celebrates sexual liberation, freedom, reproduction, just the freedoms of, individuals to do what they want within, consent. So like if you go through the suggested celebration for Lupercalia is rituals with mock sacrifice, orgies, BDSM, asexual awareness, bodily autonomy, and wolves.
Wait, what was that last one?
Wolves. Lupercalia, Luper, Roman for
So just, hanging out with your wolf buddies. I mean, I'm down for some wolf cuddles, honestly. That's fantastic.
So yeah, that's Lupercalia. We did actually get to do that because that was before everything got shut down. So that's actually the only one of these we've actually fully been able to celebrate. Beyond that, you've got April 30th is Hexanacht. That one is basically for remembrance of individuals who have been victims of any form of witch hunt. Mm-hmm. Superstition, pseudoscience, Salem witch hunt, the Satanic Panic, all that kind of stuff. that is basically a remembrance for them.
Oh,
That's really interesting.
that's really cool, actually, because I mean, Satanism and witchcraft was a blanket term for independent thinking.
Yeah, it was.
And so a lot of people were lost in witch hunts that were just
Yeah, exactly. Just for, doing their own thing.
yeah. All right, that's awesome.
It is interesting.
Our next one, actually a couple weeks from now, Unveiling Day, July 25th. That one is to celebrate 5 years ago. July 2015 was the unveiling of the Baphomet statue.
Remember that?
Dude, there was a lot of pissed off people.
Oh, didn't they buy like a public domain where they put the statue?
Isn't that
or
what
something
happened?
along those lines?
No, it was built originally because there was a legal case in Oklahoma. They built it because in Oklahoma there was, and obviously various other places, there's a Ten Commandments monument that was up in Oklahoma on the Capitol grounds of the state capitol, and the idea of separation of church and state. It's violating the Constitution by having a purely Christian monument there. If you want to keep that there, you need to have representation from other groups. So the idea was, build Baphomet. You want to keep the Ten Commandments there, you got to put our statue next to it. Otherwise, you're not being pluralistic. You're violating the Constitution. Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled in favor, surprisingly, of the Satanic Temple and took the Ten Commandments down.
Wow.
It then followed after that, went to Arkansas. This case is still ongoing. Same kind of thing. You've got a Ten Commandments monument put up. Satanic Temple's coming in. You want to leave that up. You got to put our statue up next to it. That case is still ongoing. But as of now, the statue is actually in the Satanic Temple headquarters in Salem.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
That is.
That's so fascinating. I'm actually really impressed that.
Way to go, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was I think it was a 7-2 win. So I mean, it's not like they edged out either. It was pretty.
That is really good.
I mean, I hate to sound so surprised, but
We're surprised.
Surprised.
Beyond that, Halloween, for reasons that don't really need to be said. And then December 25th is Sol Invictus. Yeah, that's a very similar one. That one's very based, at least from my perspective, it's based in the individual. It's based in, again, I mean, because their description here, celebration of being unconquered by superstition and consistent in pursuit and sharing knowledge. So the idea of maintaining even through potential, adversity to what these groups are trying to stop us from doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a handful of observances. Roe v. Wade, January 22nd. So the remembrance of the passing of Roe v. Wade is one of our holiday observances. This is actually a development for me. June 6th came up as Devil's Night previously. It's now listed as Lucifer's Fall.
Oh.
So that was news to me. September 30th is Blasphemy Day. That's basically just the idea of challenging religion and not allowing complete domination by one group.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the individual's birthday is considered a observance.
I'm really fascinated by the amount of autonomy that Satanism gives to people.
Right?
All of these holidays are circulating around autonomy in the self. Whereas like Abrahamic religions, it's pretty much anything but taking care of yourself.
Pretty much.
That's very fascinating. So do you still celebrate, maybe even it's not a religious holiday to you, do you still do family gatherings and stuff for Abrahamic religions like Christmas and that kind of stuff, Easter?
Yeah, this is kind of a tricky one because I've gone back and forth on it. Like for example, this past Easter, did have had a dinner. I mean, but that's just a quick little family thing, which was sketchy to begin with due to the world situation right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's with my dad, brother and sister, who brother and sister can't really gauge it. My dad has always represented himself as being a Christian, but like an idea of, hey, I'm a Christian. Hey, I got this Jesus candle up on my mantle over here, but I don't go to church.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, if I'm celebrating Easter with him, it's, hey, let's have some ham. Okay, bye. So, I mean, It's a very, calling it celebration is it's kind of a
So
stretch.
it's more about being together.
Beyond that, I've always been a fan of Christmas. Basically, just once again based off the lights, music, Christmas movies. I've always been into that. So I celebrate that. The way I look at it is I celebrate Santa Claus, not Jesus.
Well, I mean, that's essentially how we are.
Yeah.
Being atheists, we have kids, and so Christmas is a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's about Santa Claus and spending time with our family, and that's where it ends.
Yeah, we're not we both, for a period of time, were Wiccan back in the day. And so we have this relationship with fairies and lore and legends, but it's not a religious belief. It's more like a celebration of, we tell our kids about fairies and the mythology and stuff behind that. And we celebrate holidays together as time together as a family.
Yeah.
And Christmas is essentially just encouraging the kids' imagination.
Pretty much.
So we're at question number 4. Many people believe that those who identify as Satanists are inherently bad people who commit crimes, perform human sacrifices, or encourage rape or pedophilia. What are Satanists' beliefs surrounding these topics, if there is like an accepted narrative amongst everyone?
It's basically no. As it comes to, you mentioned what do we actually worship and believe. One thing I left out here is Satanic Temple. We follow the 7 fundamental tenets. First one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. 2, the struggle for justice is ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forgo one's own. 5, belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. 6, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might be caused. And 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. So coming from those, basically everything in there is a no-no.
No, yeah.
Even going back to, LaVey back in the 60s, Satanism has always been the idea of personal freedom, personal liberation, individual choice. And coming from that perspective, human sacrifice, crime, rape, all that stuff, you're then violating someone else's being by doing that.
So your basic principles, all of this stuff is just no.
It's the absolute it's the way that standard mainstream society looks at these things is no different than the way that we look at these things.
Perfect. I think that's a fantastic way to put it. So you mentioned earlier that there are different types of Satanism. But question number 5 we have, are there different types of Satanism? And I guess maybe I should ask you instead, what are some of them that you could name, if you can name very many?
I'm not too, educated on various of them, but a handful. The big one is Church of Satan, which was started by LaVey back in the 60s. And I believe it plays into a question you got down here. LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible, which then the Church of Satan follows as its Satanic Bible, to the letter. We don't. Mm-hmm. The Church of Satan, there's a lot of similarities between the two groups. Not so much anymore, but there's been a lot of conflict there. Like, we'll have a lot of new people come in to Satanic Temple stuff and just, bash and shit on Church of Satan. We really don't do that. I mean, they have a different way of approaching things. While we, Satanic Temple, at the national level has, done protests and gotten into lawsuits and done this and that. Church of Satan doesn't do that. They're very more focused on go do those things, but do them as an individual. Don't advertise that, a Church of Satan group is going to do those things.
Okay.
But they do have some different ideology. Like my issues with the Satanic Bible are that it's got a very social Darwinism kind of idea of survival of the fittest, the weak die, the strong live. It's got the way that I've always looked at it, another big issue is it's got a very masculine view of feminism, which is basically like, hey, use your sexuality to get what you want, and if you're not attractive, you got to figure something else out.
Gotta have a really great personality.
So yeah, there's some ideas that are different there, but they still very much have the ideas of once again personal freedom, personal choice. Those same issues with the things in the last question. I mean, they don't do that either. Church of Satan and Satanic Temple are the two big ones. Some other ones. Another one that's actually been in the news a lot as of recently is the Order of the Nine Angles. I don't know if you guys saw the news stories on that. That was like national, like that was like NBC and shit.
Wow.
To basically sum them up, again, I'm not too horribly informed, not that I want to be. They are basically a satanic neo-Nazi group.
Oh.
And like your other question of human sacrifices, they advertise human sacrifices. Though from what I've looked into, I'm not 100% sure if any of their groups have like done any of that, like have come forward and done any of that. But they do push the idea. Like I did some readings back like last week or a couple weeks ago, back when this was like national news, and they were like, there's like writings of them talking about like how Hitler was like a hero.
Oh my God.
It's they're the of all the satanic groups that once again that I've looked into or encountered at all, they're basically the ones you want to stay away from.
Do you feel like they fall more into the cult category, or is it still a larger collective?
See, I don't think they recognize themselves as being a cult because they have a lot of, like I said, I'm not too informed on their structure, so I really don't know what they fall into. But I mean that's exactly it. When an outside individual comes in and says satanic cult, they have a lot of the representations of what someone would think of as being a satanic cult.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of what I think I would envision more for a satanic cult. So speaking of which, that's the next question. We like to say we never speak in extremes, but we understand that there are extremists in everything. There are extremists in fandoms, there are extremists in religion and government. So I'm sure satanic cults do exist. But what is your take on that?
I mean, probably no different than yours. I'm sure, the representation of the media of these things and the representation of what these things were, satanic panic days and whatnot, I'm sure they're out there. But anything that I've come across, anything that I've specifically seen, no. The satanic panic stuff, the accusations of the cults and satanic practices and whatnot, that's all been shot down. That none of that was at all associated with satanic cults. That was all just solely projection from outside sources that once again just wanted to blame some big evil for all the problems that were going on in the world, and that's what they, Satan is what they went with. But yeah, beyond that, I got nothing else. I got nothing else on that, because like I said, it's something I'm sure they're out there to some extent or another, but nothing specific.
Not the majority.
Oh, absolutely not.
Sorry, I just felt, just so I can clarify for everyone, that if they are.
Well, I mean, it's no different than Christian groups. I mean, you've got Westboro Baptist Church and whatnot, and the shit that they do. It's really no different, across the board. You're gonna have religions, and you're gonna have groups. You're gonna have people in every category of human society that are bad.
Yep,
it's gonna happen.
Kind of building on that a little bit. With your own personal beliefs, when someone mentions the occult, what do you think of, or what does that mean to you or other Satanists when you hear the occult?
I think we usually come at it in a pretty broad sense. Anything, I mean, for me, anything magic associated, mystical, supernatural kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I do get when people come at and like describe our stuff as being a cult. I mean, I get that because I get where they're coming from. I look at a cult as being just like a generic broad term for like magic, mysterious kind of stuff like that.
So Satanism is not synonymous with Wicca. and not synonymous with like all magic doing and
No, well, I mean, I will say that there's a lot of crossover because there are, and I mean, it's just kind of common sense that there's a lot of overlapping appeal. Just from the the imagery perspective of people that are into Wicca, people that are into that stuff, and us, there's a lot of overlap, and that goes also into how some, not all, I mean, because once again, it's just based off the individual. There is definitely ritual that takes place. I mean, within our group, not in a supernatural sense. It's more of a psychological thing, almost like a personal meditation kind of thing to get you in the right mindset, to get you past obstacles, to get you past this or that, and that in itself could very much appeal to people within Wicca and otherwise that could potentially make their way over.
Okay. I've heard the comparison a lot when people are trying to normalize it and help outsiders understand that a ritual in the occult, a ritual in Satanism can be, very similar to taking communion for Catholics. Like those, even though they are Christian or Catholic or Abrahamic in general, those are rituals.
Yeah.
So you have your own, spin on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a simple one to describe it would be like a destruction ritual. We've done a handful of those now. It's we have an individual that writes up the rituals, and then she'll give like something of a speech, an inspiring speech, or let the past go, move forward, heal, whatever the focus of the individual is, whatever the focus of the topic is. And, you take a piece of paper, write down something you want to rid yourself of, fear, guilt, this or that. You go through the ritual, the person calls people forward, you throw it in the fire, you go from there. Like I've seen individuals, like there are, a perfect example of this is we've had destruction rituals in which you'll have a trans individual who will go and burn their old clothes as a symbolic way to, move forward.
Interesting. That's fascinating. So if there was one thing that you could change about the outside perception of Satanism or Satanists, what would that be?
I got a very boring answer on that one.
Okay.
Everything.
It's just once again, just the broad idea of what we are is just the mainstream idea is just literally 100% inaccurate. Mm-hmm. It's like they don't have anything right. So it's just the entire conversation needs to be had. It's going to be a challenge because especially with America, being in the position of it is, and with Christianity being as prominent as it is, and Christians all the way up through the government and all that, the idea of, okay, well, if you got the Christians running things, they obviously got to have a bad guy, and we're kind of the easy choice for that. But yeah, it's just the entire perception on it's just absolutely inaccurate.
There's some questions here that was more about your personal experience. I'm going to come back to them at the end, and okay. We're going to skip ahead to number 11. And that was what your perception of the satanic panic was. And if you could very briefly summarize to people who might not understand what we mean when we say that.
Well, I was born late and or after it, so I can't speak from, experience on that. Mm-hmm. But to basically sum it up, it is a modern witch hunt. There were individuals that were, running daycare centers or doing this, doing that. And, hey, I think you're doing satanic practices at that daycare center. You're going to get arrested. And then you've got old women, standing on, in court. Do you worship Satan? No. No. And again, there are people that are still in prison from that.
Oh my God.
Because once again, it goes back to the idea of, once again, like the Salem witch trials, of paranoia and overt control and supernatural beliefs or whatever it may be that drive people to just look for this big overarching bad guy and call people out, and then they go to prison.
Yeah. Wow.
Again, how exactly this happened, how exactly courts and juries and whatnot all came together to let all this take place, I can't answer that. But yeah, it was a shit period of time that at the end of the day is still ongoing, because obviously the perception of Satanists and that idea has not changed and is still looked at in the way that it is, or it has been. Obviously it's better with, Satanic Temple and whatnot being more public and more active, but to some extent or another, it's still an ongoing problem. Because I mean, you've got psychological groups, the ISSTD, who's a group that pushes this idea of recovered memory therapy, in which you've got psychiatrists that basically coach people into, canned responses that they were controlled by the Illuminati to do this, this, and this. And you've got these groups that are still doing that today in modern society. That stuff is still going on. It's why we do what we do, to try to end that ridiculous.
Well, we see it in our research from the early 1900s to we've done people that serial killers that we've covered in the 70s, that even though there may have been the tiniest sliver of interest in the occult, that it becomes when other people record or talk on it.
That's why they were serial killers.
Yes.
That's the reason. Not all their childhood trauma or the fact that they were abused for most of their lives. No, it's definitely the occult.
And so what we've tried to do in our podcast is every single time that comes up, we almost do like a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Where we say, we're going to explain, this section of this person's life, but we just want you to know that that is not what most Satanists or what most people who participate in BDSM, because that's another one that gets lumped in there a lot and made into this big taboo, scary thing.
I feel like we almost get angry about it.
Yeah,
in our
it's very fresh, because to me, it would take 5 minutes of research to realize that it's not like that at all.
Well, and I think that we experienced some of that in our own teenage years, being goth kids, and we were judged very harshly just for being goth
we
kids.
actually had so when she was 16 and I was 15. Our friend committed suicide, unfortunately. And the newspaper, because we were all goth, the newspaper immediately said that it was because of him in the occult and that we were all cult members. And when they came to interview our friends, they hugged the reporters, like to say thank you for coming and talking to us, because they were teenagers and they didn't know, like, they were actually trying to make propaganda about them. So we have firsthand experience of a little bit of that, even though neither of us ever claimed to be satanic or anything. We literally just listened to bitch metal and wore trip pants.
Yeah. I mean, I think at that point you were still Christian, or
I was a teen parent and Christian.
And I was raised in a Methodist household. I mean, it wasn't until I lost my dad that I finally cut and just said, no, I'm just an atheist. Yeah. Like, that's it.
Yeah, I moved to the Bible Belt and was like, oh, this ain't it. This ain't it. Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it is a lot of fear mongering and propaganda, and also to push a narrative in order to get a verdict a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Either by media or by the actual jury in some cases.
Well, I think it's human nature too to try to find a reason why.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that the way they raised kids in the 50s and 60s was traumatic. No one wants to talk about childhood trauma.
Let's blame it on Satan.
I mean, yes. I mean, think about it like that, because if you put it on raising your children, well, then A, you've got to take some self-responsibility for that, and people don't want to do that. And B, it's a nuanced thing, because that's a complicated thing of, okay, this might have contributed, this might have contributed, this might have contributed. But it's a lot easier to just say, hey, Satan did it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot because people want simple answers. People want the Illuminati are behind everything. The Clintons are behind everything. Not that the world's a little bit more complicated than that. And Satanism is obviously a very easy answer on that.
So for our next question, which has been my personal favorite in the weirdest way ever, number 13, what does the average day of a Satanist look like to you? So I imagine you must wake up very early in the morning for all your virgin sacrifices and blood drinking.
Lots of Hail Satan during the day, right?
on occasion. Me personally, I am probably a bad example for that, because me personally, it's pretty boring, because average day, stuff along those lines doesn't really take.
So not a whole lot of orgies.
Oh. I do what I do with the group, and we run our meetings, and especially now, we do all of our stuff online. We have our activities, we have our rituals, we have our meetings and fundraisers and stuff like that. I've dabbled in individual ritual here and there. As you, I don't know if you could tell, boxes and whatnot. I am in the process of moving at the time being, so I've not really been able. I've not been able to really do so much with that as of recently. But I know that we do have people in our group that I do rituals on a weekly basis. We have individuals in our group that live stream rituals that they do every few weeks. But I mean, day to day, it's average person stuff. Throw some Hail Satans in there. Throw some rituals in there here and there.
Little blood in the coffee.
A little bit. I went to a candle making class in Salem. I went to a candle making class in Salem that Shiva Honey did, who's a big person within TST, and there was an optional aspect of that to put your blood in the candle, and I did do that.
That's something that it existed in Wicca. We drink the blood of Christ when we're doing.
Well, I mean, just on that topic, because Shiva Honey is one of the individuals that really pushed for rituals within TST, because once again, it's I speak from my personal opinion as it comes to these ideas, but obviously while we are a group and while we have the tenets, we have our key philosophies and ideas. Obviously, they branch out based off the individual. There are a lot of people within TST that are completely 100% against ritual just because of the fact that it reminds them of the supernatural aspect, and they want nothing to do with it.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Shiva has, consistently pushed for it. She's done rituals, in cross country. She's done rituals at the headquarters. She wrote a book on said rituals, which I believe I have buried somewhere. But it's.
Well, I just have to comment, since you were describing that you're moving and stuff, for everyone who's listening to this podcast right now, I don't know what you're envisioning Kyle and his room potentially looking like, but right now we have a guitar in the background, some Mortal Kombat old school arcade games, looks like some collectible toys back there. There's no coffins or pentagrams or blood.
It's more like right there.
Yeah, okay, well, there we go. There's some really cool art. It's nothing
that you would think stereotypically.
See, that's yet though. Because I bought a house and I get the keys for it on Wednesday, and
congratulations.
That's
See?
more.
Satanist doing more normal people
that's
shit.
That's on the list. Like on the list, because I think the house is like tan or something like that. First thing I'm doing is like painting the whole house black.
Oh God, that sounds like amazing.
You're speaking to our dreams here.
Seriously. Okay. This one is another really fun question. We have heard that Satanism is very progressive in terms of feminism, reproductive rights, sex positivity, and the LGBTQIA plus community. Do you consider that to be true?
100%.
We actually recently read a book that said that the heart and soul of Satanism kind of surrounds those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it just goes back to the idea of personal freedom, because it goes back to the idea of basically do what you want within consent, as long as you're not hurting others. Take that as broad as you want. That involves sexual freedom. That involves, partner choice. That involves all of the above. So it goes right all back into that. Third tenet, one's body is inviolable. Again, that goes into that. That goes into trans rights. That goes into lesbian, gay rights. That goes into all the above.
Do you feel like you guys as a collective are active in activism? That's
a tricky one too, because in the position that we're in right now, the Ohio group specifically, TST National, obviously so, because they've done what they've done. Various groups have done stuff, here and there. Ohio specifically, it's a tricky spot for us, because not being an official chapter yet, our ability to do things using the Satanic Temple name is questionable, because basically we have to get permission to do so, and we can only do things that are basically on this set list. And activism, protesting, stuff like that are big no's, especially a big no is basically across the board at this point. Activism wise, I will say that our group has done some other things. We've there's an animal shelter that we've been to. We've been going to off and on since October. Mm-hmm. We've done some unofficial park cleanups on stuff. We've got people that have done highway cleanup stuff. So again, yes, but again, tricky question, because in our position, we can't do it as publicly and as frequently as we want. But obviously, we plan on continuing that as we become a chapter.
Once you become an official chapter, then will you be able to do that stuff more often?
Yeah. We shouldn't have any. Well, once again, we still have to verify stuff from the International Council, because obviously they got to make sure that groups are sticking to message. Yeah. But yeah.
I thought that was such a great thing when we were researching it to learn about, because again, it goes totally against the narrative that's put out there.
Yeah, definitely.
About how invested in community that you guys tend to be.
Yeah.
And the more it's such a shame that there is not enough presence of the good that the Satanic Temple does. And when it is, oftentimes it's used for shock value rather than just awareness.
They're doing really good things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but.
Well, I mean, I think we're getting there, because I mean, as the groups and chapters develop and become more active, the exposure is going to increase, and I think we're on the right track.
I think that media being actually educating themselves on what you guys stand for would be so helpful. Now, we talked a little bit in the beginning about you being in somewhat of a leadership role in your local chapter. Can you kind of describe what that means, what that's like, what your responsibility entails?
My role, I am a technical term, co-lead organizer is what we go with. Basically, me and the other organizer, we maintain things on the statewide level, and then we maintain things, obviously being at the unofficial level, it's not a whole lot as of yet, but we also manage things as it comes to national, meaning any communication from like international council, other groups, other chapters that go to the group go through myself or the other organizer. So we do the communication with the other groups. We do, and then we manage events at the statewide level. We have, as of now, 2 individuals that run local groups. So like right now we have our state divided up half and half. So we have a northern group, we have the southern group. We have an individual that runs each one of those groups, and they maintain, local meetings and local stuff there. My role primarily at this point in time is I organize and I run. We do weekly online meetings, Zoom meetings. So I mean, it was shortly before this started. We just had one. I maintain that. I run that. The other organizer runs our book club, which is something else. So we do that once a month.
I just love this so much.
I know.
If you tell me that you knit, I'm gonna shit a brick.
We actually have a lot of people that do that.
Like just knit, candle making, book club, knitting. Why does this sound like something my grandma would totally be a part of? It's fantastic.
I mean, and we're not laughing because like we find it funny. It's like irony almost that literally every preconceived notion is just wrong.
So wrong. You mentioned a little bit of personal activism that each individual is more than welcome to do on their own and stuff. What does your family function look like? So I think that another perception is that Satanism is unhealthy for a nuclear family to raise children and that kind of stuff, which obviously everything that you've told us nullifies that. But if you could just kind of give your input on it.
Well, I could say that there are a number of I think about it. Let's say a number of families. The families that are in our group primarily, not many have children. But I will say that our second state meeting, and I thought this was funny because we kind of led off with it. No, it was actually our first state meeting. We did our first state meeting, which is a statewide meeting that we did in Columbus back in middle of last June. We had a couple who have since moved. They're no longer involved with the group because they moved a couple months after this. Couple showed up with their 2 kids. I think their son was like 13, 14, and their like 8-year-old daughter. So, I mean, that itself, I think, kind of sums it up because, we have people that are 100% comfortable with that environment. So, I can't speak too much on the children front because we really don't have a whole lot of people in our group that have children. But as it comes to like couples and relationships and stuff like that, I'm married. My wife was originally not involved. She was, I think, concerned and thrown off by it originally because once again, my involvement started and it just took off real fast. She's since she's gotten involved now. She's more involved than she was previously, starting to get it more. But she makes comments of having discomfort regarding obviously, preconceived brainwashing, we'll call it, that that much of society has. But no, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's can't speak 100% on nuclear family aspect of it because we don't really have a whole lot of experience in that. But just from my opinion, I don't see it once again as being problematic. I mean, it's no different than any other group. It's we have our ideals and our representations, and that's something that I don't see problematic of a family being able
I
to stick
think
with.
it's interesting because as someone who has little kids, I would almost be more inclined to be like, yeah, the Satanic Temple is more of the ideals that I would want my children to be raised with. But, I raised my children with the very progressive, individualistic, accepting of everyone.
And it just so happens to fall in line with what your core beliefs are.
Yeah. Exactly. Because I mean, just that idea of respect everybody.
Yeah, I mean, to even answer my own question, essentially, everything that he has described, how can you find
a flaw?
Yeah.
You can't find anything wrong with that.
That is how.
I mean, unless you are anti feminism or
That's a common point for it, is that a vast majority of the population explain everything that I've mentioned, explain our representation, tenets, philosophy, all the above. Explain it to them without saying Satanist, and they'll basically universally agree with it. And then you throw that part in there. Whoa. Then they got to take a step back.
Yeah, I think that would be the same for anyone that I know that in my family. I mean, yeah, very much so. We've talked a lot about the satanic panic, but I would kind of want to hear, what is your feelings and perception of the injecting devil worship and Satanism into true crime, like what people do now? Does it really upset you that that's the fame that you guys get? That's the attention that you get?
Yeah. I mean, upset me, I would say, obviously, just because it's against message, it's against what we represent. It's painting, again, one potentially bad, sick individual at, their representation with everybody else. But I mean, it just like I said, it just goes back to the satanic panic stuff. It's just, it's an easy target. It's an easy way to blame people. And then, even if these individuals have some memorabilia or representation or writings or whatnot saying that they believe Satanism, or, Satan told me to do this, or whatever it might be, people want, a good story. And the idea of a serial killer is one thing, but the idea of a satanic serial killer, that takes it to the next level. And that makes, that's the part that makes it interesting. Because, like, I mean, the Order of the Nine Angles thing that I mentioned earlier, when that story was going around, I mean, there were people that were commenting on that Facebook. They were sharing that article, or sharing those articles, and they were commenting on that Facebook post just with that idea of, why do they have to point out that satanic connection? And, it's just that idea, is that's what makes it interesting. So in a lot of these cases, that takes it to the next level of interest, whether or not they actually believed it, whether or not they were actually involved, whether or not, drove them to do whatever it is that they do. It's people find it interesting, and they run with it.
I imagine, have you ever had confrontation with people on that sort of stuff? Like, where they try to tell you, no, you're a devil worshiper?
Not specifically, I feel like a lot of people are just afraid of confrontation. So like a lot of people that might potentially think that won't actually like come up to me and say it. Because like I've not had that happen.
Well, I mean,
honestly.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Okay, for our audience listening and not looking at him, he has 666 tattooed across his knuckles. And by the way, totally segueing, how does that affect, like when you're at work, do they ask you to cover anything up?
That's going to be an interesting question. Because up until this point, I've worked at the grocery store. No, that's not come up at all. I mean, I will. It is amusing to me every so often. Well, I'll be a cashier, and then you'll have some old woman that's like, "Oh yeah, you've got some beautiful tattoos." And I had one guy that was like, "Oh yeah, you got some cool ink," except for I think he was talking about Baphomet here. Oh, but that's too satanic for me. Most interactions regarding it are, I mean, I've come up with a solid response, and I just tell people that it's Paradise Lost. But no, yeah, they've been cool. There's not been a single reference to it whatsoever. But the question is going to be in the next few weeks here, because my other job is I've worked in the steel factory for like the last 6 years, but I graduated with my psychology degree in December. I've been trying to, use that, and I just got a job at a youth center that I start in 2 weeks.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Like on the 20th. So whether or not, because like I've had individuals that have, vocalized it. Oh, that's going to be a problem. People are going to accuse you of stuff. People are going to blame you for stuff. We'll see.
But I worked in the medical field years ago, and I was always told that I couldn't have a lot of tattoos and piercings and things like that because I would never be able to get a job.
And
in the
now
medical
nurses
field.
have vibrant pink hair and tattoos.
Yeah,
now nurses are covered in.
No, yeah, because I got that idea too. Because as soon as I went to the orientation a few days ago, as soon as I walked in, it's like the receptionist is like an old woman with blue hair.
Yeah.
It infuriates me because I held off on doing, a sleeve of tattoos and having all my piercings and my crazy hair colors that I wanted because I worked in the medical field. And at that time it wasn't accepted.
Yeah.
And now it is. And I'm just like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. I mean, which is shocking to me, because I mean, it did kind of cross my mind that it was going to be problematic at some point in time, but I mean, as of now, it hasn't.
Well, that's awesome.
I feel like so much of us millennials are just so covered in tattoos that they've just been like, well,
might as well just give up on it.
Yeah. But I think, so you mentioned that you just got your degree in psychology and that you got a job at a place to help, is it troubled youth?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
Again, here's yet another example of just not at all what people would expect or their perception of the trope of a Satanist. I mean, the fact that you put yourself through school to learn human psychology in order to help people is just a testament to your character.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Chelsea went to school for psychology, and so I can only imagine that, like, you have to be genuinely invested in people to put yourself through that. So I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, that is great.
This is another really fun question. Chelsea and I don't know if you're on the TikTok, but Chelsea and I do enjoy a good TikTok. We love sacrificing all of our evenings to scrolling through it. And we have both ended oddly on gay TikTok and witch TikTok. I don't know how it happened,
but that's where we're at.
So a huge thing right now is what they call witch talk. And it is a ton of these 30-second videos of witch rituals and the occult and Satanism, and they're making it very normal and accessible to people who might not have understood it, but it's also trending. So sage is trendy, and crystals are trendy, and pentagrams are trendy. What are your feelings on that?
I mean, generally speaking, good, go for it. Because I mean, that idea that, as I said, of TST, getting out there and exposure and being active, that representation, same kind of thing. Because if you've got a position in which you have, teenagers and kids, whatever, wearing, witchy clothes and clothes with pentagrams on them and stuff like that. It normalizes it to where that people aren't just like, oh my God, you're evil. Because if everybody's, there's still going to be those people that do that, but it makes it so that people see it more, people get exposed to it more. You're not going to wear a pentagram t-shirt and get struck by lightning the next day. But then, yes, obviously at the same time, it's somewhat problematic because then people do these things and wear these symbols and these representations without realizing what necessarily they're representing. But generally speaking, I think it's a good thing because then, yeah, it gets the exposure out there. It gets people more comfortable with it. I can't say I'm familiar. I have the app and I've watched like a couple like duck videos or something. I don't know. But then, yeah, if that's a way for people to learn about it, that's, an introductory aspect to it, then yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever experience any gatekeeping from other members of the community, if you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. Recently, not so much, because within our group, we're pretty good on it. Basically, to join our group, for example, there's a list of questions that you got to answer, which just basically just, do you know what you're getting into? Have you read the tenets? Do you know what we follow? That kind of stuff. Whoever is adding people that day usually does like a quick little, run through on their page. As long as they're not posting Hail Hitler kind of stuff, we usually let them in. There has been issues in the past along those lines of people having a mindset. At least what I've taken is having that mindset of people having, like, for example, this right here. It's band Ghost. You guys familiar with them? Ghost?
No, I know who they are, but I don't listen to their music.
They have, and they've grown through popularity of having a very satanic vibe. Their imagery, lyrics have kind of mainstreamed a little bit over the years. But I had conversations with people that had this idea that, oh, if you got into Satanism from Ghost, you're fake.
Yeah.
And there would be people that kind of pushed that idea because, oh, I've been a Satanist since the 80s and that's not real, or that doesn't count. I don't know, shit like that. Yeah, exactly. And then there is issues with that as well of basically, because like I said, while we have our established philosophies, ideas, tenets, all that stuff, thought processes obviously diverge. People have different ideas on things. And there's a lot of infighting of, oh, if you believe this over that, you don't believe what we believe, get out.
I see that a lot in a lot of my feminism groups that I'm a part of, that they're, oh, if you're, hi, Becky. Yeah, I just want to talk to you. Your feminism percentage, it's gone down to about 50. We're going to have to ask you to leave.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there was similar things to that.
Oh, absolutely. Because especially where we're at of being a Friends of Group and not a chapter, we have a relatively lighter vetting system. As we get to the point of chapter, as we, advance and get more further along the path, we're going to block that down more. We end up having a lot of people that come in that are just exposed, read one article, Googled us real quick, found them, joined, and then all of a sudden they're getting into fights with people because they think we go and burn down churches.
Oh, okay.
Especially with where we're coming from of being a Friends of Group, we end up getting a lot of people that don't fully know what it is we represent, and then we end up having that infighting of who believes what's right, and then you're not a real Satanist, I am, your Satanism is not mine, and ends up being a lot of ugly infighting.
I'm sure this is more like personal choice. It's not going to be a broad strokes thing.
Yeah.
Do you yourself fight back against misinformation as often as you can, or just you have to be in the mood for it?
I would say it depends on what it is, and I have to be in the mood for it because it's obvious. I scroll through Facebook and I see coronavirus made in a lab. I see masks don't work. I see this new Wayfair stuff, and people making these broad, exaggerated claims with little to no evidence. It gets exhausting to post like scientific articles or backed up research on these things because they never read it.
So nobody from your Friends of Satanic Temple is going to be like, hey, I noticed that you're not really speaking out on this or anything.
No, well, I mean, yeah, because that's not a part of what we do. Now, I will say something that different is if we have someone in the group that's in our group that's posting pseudoscientific stuff.
Okay.
We make sure that we reach out to those people and say, hey, are you really backing up what you're saying? Are you falling into conspiracy theories that kind of violates a tenet?
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being tricky because then, yes, it ends up being, individual freedom, personal choice. People have different thoughts. People have different opinions on things. But then you have to draw the line somewhere of what's a conspiracy theory and what's actual fact.
I was compelled to ask you that because when you were going through all the tenets and stuff, I'd never heard the thing about scientific information and objective truth.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool that they compel you to be proactive in that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I know any other religions that are like,
no, I don't,
honoring objective truth.
Yeah.
I'm just thoroughly impressed, and I'm just so thankful that we ended up doing this because I feel like I normally say there's a lot to unpack here, but I don't feel like there's a lot to unpack. I feel like they unpacked it for you, hung the shit up in the closet, folded it, put it away nicely. And if you're not at least compassionate or empathetic, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
I agree.
After, thank you so much for going through all these questions and stuff with us. And,
absolutely.
Letting us ask you personal opinions. I know that in this day and age that can be a little hard to do. Did you have anything? I'm sorry, I kind of took over.
No, you're fine. I'm fascinated by all of this. It is freaking awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle. We appreciate
you. Absolutely.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Hail Satan.
Bye. We hope you found this episode as interesting and enlightening as we did, and we hope to bring you more bonus material like this in the future. Let us know what you thought. Did you learn anything new? Maybe change your perception? Fill you with vigor and rage? You want to chop our heads off? Let us know.
How dare we ever continue to do this? We had fun, honestly.
We did.
Kyle was a peach. I would love to make him our satanic correspondent. Can we tap him in on a regular basis for research purposes? He was fantastic.
He really was. We hope you, in all seriousness, we really do hope you enjoyed this episode because we really enjoyed making it.
Once again, thank you, Kyle, for coming and participating in our tumfuckery. This was a blast. We also want to give a shout out to the Friends of the Satanic Temple in Ohio for allowing, us to have this candor and conversation. We really, really appreciate it. You guys know the drill. If you like what you hear, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram at The Killer T, on YouTube at The Killer T.
We're also on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to send us a message, you can on any of our social media platforms. You can also send us an email to thekillert@gmail.com. We're open to any and all comments.
Yeah. All right. Until next time.
Bye.